What's up guys, it's Andy. Here we have a Honda with a manual transmission problem. I know manual transmissions are kind of extinct, but there is still some out there and they're gonna have problems. So the driver of the car stated that for a while he heard a grinding noise or almost like a bearing type noise while he was driving, only while he was moving. And eventually when he came to a stoplight and when he went to pull away in first gear, about 10 miles an hour, everything shut off. The car shut off, the car stopped. He had to have it towed home and he ended up having a broken axle. I believe it was the driver's side axle. He put an axle in and that was all good, but then when he went to shift the car and drive it, it didn't move. When you go to shift into gear, even with your foot on the clutch, it's extremely difficult to get it into any gear. Eventually you can get it into a gear, and then when you go to drive away, as soon as you let off the clutch, stepping on the gas, the vehicle just shuts down. Another thing we noticed, with the front wheels off the ground and the vehicle in neutral, if we go to let off the clutch, the front wheels are actually spinning. So there's obviously some internal damage to this transmission. Let's get it on the bench and see what's going on. Here we have the transmission on the bench and we're gonna go over some of the things on the outside before we tear into it and see what's going on inside. So in the front here, this is what attaches to the engine. This is where your clutch would be. Your clutch goes on the splines here, and the engine, it will obviously be spinning while the engine's running. And then when the clutch is engaged, it will spin this shaft right here. And because this transmission's junk, I can put some locking pliers on it. Otherwise, you don't want to do that. So this will be spinning. And then there'll be a throwout bearing right here. So when you step down on the clutch, pushes on that bearing and disengages the clutch so that the transmission itself stops spinning. And that's how you're able to shift between the gears and stuff. So let's loosen this up a little bit. So we can see right now the transmission is in neutral, and with this spinning, this is where the output is. This is what's going to go to the axles. You can see that that is spinning, which that's not supposed to happen right there. This is how we shift the different gears. So there's a shifter right here. So I can't even engage those gears. If I lift this up, this is another set of gears. I can engage that gear, which I think is probably reverse. But when I do that, transmission doesn't move at all. Let's tighten this down. Yeah, it's locked, so that doesn't do anything. I can't get into that gear. I can get into that gear. And again, can't do anything. Shift it into a different gear. That doesn't move. And again, that doesn't move either. So there's definitely some carnage, some grenaded parts inside this transmission. So let's start ripping and tearing. First I'm going to drain the fluid out. There is a drain, or a couple drains. There's a drain right here and right there. So let's take those out. Pull that out. See if I can get this to drain into this pan. Yep, some of the fluid's coming out. Flip this over. And I'll just put this plug back in for now. And we'll take this plug out right here. All right, so do the same with that, just drain this fluid out. And I don't see any fluid in there. It's not too good. Could be why we're doing this in the first place. Unless someone drained the fluid out before us, but there's nothing coming out of there. I'll put that plug back in for now. And now we'll start tearing it apart. We're going to start with taking the brackets off. It's a couple brackets, a couple sensors. Oh, I was going to take this off as well. Let's just prise out right there. Set that aside. We're not saving this transmission, so it's not really important whether things get broken. We just want to see what's inside. All right. Start ripping and tearing. Oops, wrong size. Another bracket here. There's another sensor over here that broke. See if we can pry this out. There we go. Some type of speed sensor, probably vehicle speed sensor. Small. Reverse light switch. When you put it in reverse, pushes on a lever, and that closes the contacts or opens them, however the circuit works for this vehicle. I'll take apart the lever assembly. See if this comes out. Where's my light? There's a little plug in there. There we go. Pull that out. And that'll slide out. Trying to separate this. treading a little bit. So this is how it shifts, which is pretty cool. So this goes up and down, and that's good. Engage your different gears. All right, so let's keep going. There's a spring and a little ball in there. And same with that one. Now let's take all these bolts out around the case. Oh, these are tight. All right. Just get a bigger gun. I think that's it. See if we can pry between here and here. Sometimes there's special tools you can use to get in there and separate those. Just use a bigger pry bar. Oh, missed one. I know you guys saw that and weren't telling me. All right, something's holding this up. This is just a fill plug. It should just come apart. Something could be jammed and that's why we're struggling. Get something on the front holding this up? I don't think so. It should just come apart. Thanks, sir. I'm pretty sure it's stuck where the differential is, right there. Oh, maybe not. It doesn't look stuck. Where are we stuck then? this fill plug or drain plug out again. See if there's anything in there. I don't think so. Could just be welded together. Not welded together, but okay, so yeah, that's probably what I gotta take out. There is a snap ring in here. Oh, gotta switch over the snap rings so they spread instead of put together. I saw that earlier, I should have known. Oh well. Watch it just drop. There we go. That's what it was, that snap ring. Don't forget the snap ring. So there we go, it looks pretty cool. So we don't see any major carnage, which is a little bit disappointing, but sometimes that happens with manual transmissions. It seems like there's going to be a lot wrong with it and you don't really see much. So this is kind of how the gears work. So this shaft right here with all these gears on it, this is the input from the engine, so the clutch is spinning and that's going through here. And then the power from each individual gear goes over to this shaft right here. And then this shaft is eventually going to spin the differential, and then the power is going to go out to each wheel through the drive shafts. So how this works is if you look at the smaller gear right here, so this one right here is second, right here. And then over here, this is the bigger gear. So the smaller gear to the bigger gear on this side is going to be your lower speeds. So the next one right here is third. It's a little bit bigger there and a little smaller on this side. Fourth, which is almost 1-to-1. And fifth, which is a little bit bigger on this side and then smaller on that side. This is first gear, which is way down here. It's the smallest gear there and then the biggest gear right there. And reverse, we also have reverse. Reverse is kind of cool. So this little gear, because if you want to get reverse, you have to add another gear in there. So the power goes through here, over into this, and then that's how you get the reverse. So it's pretty cool. Before we take this apart any further, let's just show you how this works for when you're shifting the transmission. When you have your gear selector, it's going to move these different rods, and that's going to move these forks, and that's going to move the sleeve, and that's going to engage the different gears. These are basically called synchros right here. That's where you get that term when you hear the synchros. And that's actually what you hear grinding. When you go to change gears and you hear something grinding, you're actually grinding these. You're not actually grinding the gears. Everyone thinks you're grinding gears, but you're not. It's those teeth right there. Those are grinding on this sleeve. That's why you need to push down on the clutch. All right, so that's pretty cool. So let's take this off. I can take this sleeve off right here, or this shaft. It's for the reverse. And I'll take all these off. If we slide this off, when you're doing this, obviously you want to keep everything separate so you didn't get anything mixed up. So this is kind of how the synchro works right here. So when it engages this, it's kind of uses friction to engage that, so it won't move. And then when it's disengaged, it's just loose and able to spin. All right, so that's pretty neat. Oh, this is pretty chewed up. Right there. I'm wondering if that's part of it. It's a possibility. There's some bearings. We're going to take this nut off. It's just peened over a little bit, so I just need a little punch and just bend it back a little bit. There we go. See if I have a socket that size. 30 millimeter. It's just spinning. It is loosening up. I don't want to stick my fingers in there. Oh, you know what? I'm trying to see if it's reverse thread. Doesn't look like it's reverse thread. All right, that's reverse thread. So just don't put your hands on any of the gears while you're doing that. Take that nut off. That bearing seems good. Pry some of this stuff up. Come on. Come on. All right, if I get some pry bars, I'll just pry up underneath here. Just try to separate this whole thing. There's probably special adapters for most of this stuff where you flip the entire transmission upside down, and that's how you service it. But we obviously don't have any of those. So we're just doing the best we can. Just trying to get all three of these up at once, the forks and the two shafts, the counter shaft and the main shaft. Slide that fork out, and there we go. Nice. So we can slide those out. And there's a bearing down there. So far this stuff looks okay. All right, let's move this aside for now. So that's pretty neat. But if you look at it, it looks like fourth gear was the hottest right there. Looks like something's going on with that. Let's just take this apart. This is fifth gear. But there's definitely something going on with fifth gear here. If you look at that, that's not supposed to look like that. That's all burnt. That's what it should look like. Yeah, see, this one's frozen. Oh no, it engages on this side? Let's see, how is that? No. So yeah, so this should spin, and it's not. So let's see if we can get this apart. We may have to use a puller. Because there's a shaft right here. See what kind of puller we can use. I don't have the correct puller to pull this sleeve off, so what I'm going to do is actually get the torch out, heat this up while I'm prying underneath. That should be able to release that so we can get that sleeve. Then we can see what's going on with this gear. So all these other gears spin freely. I think that's what's going on. I think fourth gear is stuck, and that's what's causing our issue. So let's pull that off and see what's going on. Well, that didn't work, so I'm just gonna have to cut it off. I'm gonna try slicing the bottom first and then slicing it up. So give this a try. So we don't have the exact tools to take this apart, so I'm doing the best I can with some presses and just trying to separate this gear right here. I feel like something's gonna break. It's not looking good. It's hard when you don't have the right tools. Yeah, it looks like something's gonna break. I don't like it. We might just have to cut it in half. There we go, got that off. So that's the inside of the race, right there. Let's take a look inside here. You can see all that blue, and those are all the bearings. So that's what happened there. That bearing heated up and failed, and cause this gear to just seize. That's pretty interesting. So that bearing looks like, there's another one here. That bearing should be like this bearing. See how it's all blue? And that's not because I was heating this up earlier. That's what happened on the road. But it's pretty interesting. So the reason why the bearing probably failed is lack of fluid, probably getting to the bearing. You know, it needs lubrication. Normally with manual transmissions, you don't have to service them as much as an automatic, but obviously it's a good idea to service them to prevent stuff like this. You can see the inside of this, how it's grooved up, how it was gouged up by the bearings. It should be smooth like this one. All right, if in theory we were going to repair this transmission, let's go over some of the parts that we would have needed. Now, if you had the correct tools to remove this properly, you would have needed this sleeve right here. You would have needed the bearing that goes with that. You would have needed this gear because of the inside that got hot. You would have needed this synchro, this one because it was burnt, and the synchro sleeve. Now that's just on this, that's the main damage right there. But you're not going to want to just leave the rest of the transmission. There's all these bearings. You would have to get in there. You'd probably want to replace all of those, because if that got hot and wasn't getting lubrication, the other ones didn't either. This ring got hot right here, this gear, that's connected to this gear. So you'd want to replace that. And then same on this side, any of these bearings. So this is going to cost a lot of money just to rebuild. Plus in here, you have the input bearing right there. You're going to want to replace that. Pull these out, check these bearings. There's a little bit of noise there. But this is how the differential works. You can see your axles go in here and stuff. So you'd want to check all this stuff out. In theory, all the parts that we see, it's probably going to cost you almost $1,000 just in parts to rebuild this thing. So obviously that's not worth it. The best thing to do would be to find a local junkyard or even check online and for junkyard parts and get a used transmission. Most likely for this unit, you could get one between $300 and $600, which is going to save you a lot of money just doing that. What I would do with the new used transmission is drain the fluid, put fresh fluid in it, and then drive it. A lot of times they actually have warranties on those as well. So this was kind of a cool video to do. It was neat to see the internals and see what actually broke in this transmission. Overall, manual transmissions aren't that common in everyday life, and there's definitely not a lot of parts out there if you wanted to rebuild one of these. But get your used one, you'll be all set. If this video helped you out and you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to our channel, ring the bell, turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our videos.